Welcome to New York's #2 sports show. The Rangers defeat the Tampa Bay Lightning 7-3 in Tampa to improve to 8-1-1 on the road this season. And the offense is getting going. And look, a lot of injuries for the Lightning. And at the same time, the Rangers had a similar situation against Carolina a few weeks ago, didn't take advantage of the opportunity where their blue line was decimated. The Rangers do take advantage of that this time. No Victor Hedman, no Ryan McDonough. And then as well, forwards wise, no Anthony Cirelli. Brandon Hagel gets hurt in, mid game. So definitely a Lightning lineup that was nowhere near full strength. But hey, Rangers, you had those chances and, you best make the most of it. And they definitely did. 7 goals, 1 being an empty net goal, but a wild first period where the Rangers scored 4 goals, Tampa scored 3. Really, not really a great game by the Rangers. A lot of sloppiness defensively, not well structured. But I guess on the flip side, there were games earlier in the season where the Rangers did play well and didn't end up, coming away with 2 points. So again, no one's going to feel sorry for you when you lose. And at the same time, 2 points are 2 points. And you still do it against a high quality opponent. And you hope that the offense is getting going here. We'll see. Right? Obviously, Nashville is not a very good team. I mean, the Lightning, that defense was really unrecognizable, truly. I mean, honestly, you wouldn't have known, maybe 3 of the defensemen would have been recognizable at most for the average fan. So, either way. And the real key is the return of Vincent Trocheck, which I probably downplayed a bit. And look, I like Vincent Trocheck's game a lot. I think he's a very important glue piece to this team as far as what he provides down the middle on a very key line with Panarin and Lafreniere. What he does, special teams. He plays in all situations, and he's very relied upon. And it's a reason. Look, for example, last year, he was on Team USA in the Four Nations tournament, and will Trocheck make the Olympic roster? In 2026, we'll see, right? But just the fact that this is why, he is someone that is very important, and Mike Sullivan must really be pleased to be able to deploy him and utilize him as much as he does. So Vincent Trocheck gets 2 goals, his first 2 goals of the season, and Artemi Panarin, 4 assists for Panarin. And, it's bald Panarin, right? He shaves his head and he does well, but also there's real reasons beyond that. And it's, Trocheck coming back and now Lafreniere looks like he has a lot more pep in his step. He scores a goal. So this game definitely had a bit of a 23-24 feel to it a couple seasons ago, where it's that Trocheck line that really gets the results. They don't necessarily play all that well, right? They get outshot by a lot. But the Rangers were always able to keep the lead. Lightning kept on making it close, but they were never able to tie it. They were able to hold them off. Who knows? The Lightning tie the game. Maybe the whole field changes. Maybe the Rangers kind of unravel a bit, but they were able to keep it together just enough to get the job done. And yeah, as far as that road record goes, 8-1-1, which is 17 points. I believe it's the most in Ranger history, points through 10 games to start the season on the road. I believe the previous mark was maybe 16 points was the most back in the early 1930s. So credit due, right? Because, as much as I feel like the home wins will be there, I've also said that road losses are coming. But hey, they've continued to do that. And, to be able to rack up these points on the road is really, really important. Their next game will be on the road as well. We'll talk about that. That's actually a back-to-back at Columbus, then home against Detroit. But Igor Shesterkin, he had his struggles in the first period. He allowed 3 goals. One of them probably more egregious than the other two, but we'll kind of dissect them. But then really was just a brick wall for the final 2 periods. And that's, when he needs to lock in, he does. And, that's the thing with Igor is as much as, he can perform poorly at one point in the game, in this, where maybe, I don't know, I don't know if it's a lapse in concentration or just simply just ineffectiveness, but he really, really ends up going from a situation where it was like a pretty bad first period to then it ends up the overall outlook is a good one after the game. So, and Andrei Vasilevsky had his struggles. Now, really, he ends up getting pulled after 2 periods, which is rare. You don't see Vasilevsky get pulled often. And really, honestly, you can't blame him too much on the 4 goals scored by the Rangers in the first, but he ends up kind of stumbling, tripping and falling on a big, big goal. Probably the biggest goal, as it turned out, of the game. The Vincent Trocheck goal at the end of the second period, which gave the Rangers a 5-3 lead. Trocheck's first goal really ends up kind of being the one that really gives the Rangers that much needed breathing room. And then, of course, really Trocheck's second goal, making it 6-3 in the third, really sort of put it out of reach. But going back to the beginning, and same lineup for the Rangers. So yet again, healthy scratches are Parson, Brodzinski, and Robertson. And I would expect it to be that way again next game. Right now, Valkonen has the leg up over Robertson for now. We'll see how long that lasts. And, as long as you keep on winning, you're typically not going to change the lineup. One thing that did happen, it was a rough game for Gabe Perreault to the point where it must have been at some point in the second period, he was moved down and Will Cuylle was moved up. Will Cuylle scoring 2 goals in this game. One an empty net goal, but Will Cuylle now the leader. He has surpassed Taylor Radish, Zibanejad, and Panarin for the team leading goals now with 6. But Cuylle moves up to play with Zibanejad and Miller, and they move Perreault down. And it was the right move to make. Now, the one thing I'll say is I think it's important to still try to be patient with Perreault as far as keeping him in the top 6. I understand, though, why it was done. I mean, they were getting caved in against the Kucherov line. It was a problem. Like, noticeably, Perreault in the defensive zone, it was not good. It was a struggle for him. It was noticeable. And, his ice time was reflected in that for sure. And so I still think that Sullivan will have him back out there for the Columbus game on the first line. I think it was more of a matchup related situation. But if it does get to the point where Perreault isn't on top 6 anymore, you could live with him on the third line. Like, let's say with Laba, even though it's a little bit risky, even though Laba, even though he's a rookie, plays a very sound, almost veteran style game, which is high praise. But for Perreault, look, him being sent back down is not out of the realms of possibility if he's unable to grab and hold that spot on that line with Zibanejad and Miller, because let's be honest, you're not breaking up the Trocheck line. That's going to stay there for a bit with how good it's been. So you had that one spot available, with, again, on the Mika Zibanejad line. So just some, not too many individual negatives in this game, but certainly Perreault was one of them. And Sullivan does make that move in the second period, which was a real struggle that second period for the Rangers after a sloppy first where they really should have had a bigger lead than they did. But the Rangers jump out to the early lead, and Yanni Gourde at the 45-second mark cross-checks Adam Fox, and it ends up in a very quick power play goal for the Rangers. 1 minute, 9 seconds into the game, Will Cuylle scores his 5th goal of the season from Fox and Panarin. It's a shot by Fox that ends up going off of the back of the Lightning defenseman. Ricochets off of the boards or off the glass behind the net and goes to Will Cuylle in front, who just, bangs it in. And I'm glad that Will Cuylle is really getting legitimate power play one time, essentially in the Chris Kreider spot. It makes sense that if you're going to go 1-for-1, Cuylle out of everyone would be the guy to fill that spot. He would be. If you want to keep it with Fox, Panarin, Miller, and Zibanejad, I think Cuylle in that combination makes the most sense. Now, look, I still think that things will probably change, right? Like you have the Trocheck could play a role at some point. You mix things around, and if Lafreniere gets hot, he's another option. So, but I think the power play it's in a better place than it was. I still think that you look at it and there's work to be done, but I like the addition of Cuylle there. Makes it 1-0 Rangers, and then 2 minutes and 22 seconds after that, it's Rangers making it 2-0. JT Miller scores. It's his fourth goal of the season, assisted by Zibanejad. Now, give a lot and most of the credit to Mika for what was a really nice, anticipating the play steal. Kucherov tries to go cross ice, go east-west play. Zibanejad intercepts it, becomes somewhat of a 2-on-1. Zibanejad going in with speed, and he passes it in the direction of Miller, and it goes off the lighting defender, and then off of Miller's skate and in. So, look, it continues to be a struggle for JT Miller. You look at the top six and players kind of getting better. Miller, to me, is still one that isn't quite at the level you want him to be. But, hey, gets the goal. I keep on saying, hopefully those sorts of things can get him going. But Zibanejad with a great play there, and they connect to make it 2-0 Rangers. Then you get a bad goal by Shesterkin. And it's Scott Sabourin scoring his first goal of the season, assisted by Douglas and Finley. And they are rookies as well, getting their first NHL points. And Scott Sabourin is a guy that's kind of bounced around, is kind of he's more of a tough guy. He's more of he's a fourth line guy that gets into fights and, has really spent more time in the AHL than the NHL. And Sabourin, well, give him some credit. It was a nice shot, but just a bad angle taken by Igor Shesterkin. And if he's positioned properly and where he needs to be, there's just no way that Sabourin scores that one. So it's one that needs to be stopped, and it's one that leads you into what became, it set the tone there because it was 2-0 Rangers, and John Cooper calls a timeout, which did work at the time, but it kind of made it a little more stressful than it needed to be. The Sabourin goal makes it 2-1. However, and I talk about this a lot, and we saw it last game, is a quick response goal by the Rangers. And it's Lafreniere scoring his fourth goal of the season from Panarin and Soucy. So it's Panarin's second point of the night at that point. And really what set this whole thing up was just a really nice check by Carson Soucy in the defensive zone on Brandon Hagel. That's the play where Hagel got hurt on. He would leave the game. And look, this was not a dirty play by Soucy. I mean, could one derive at that point? Yes. But I think if you're looking at this just not biased, and it's not like I'm some I'm a Ranger fan, but it's not like I'm some pro Carson Soucy guy. Soucy's got more size than Hagel. Hagel was going in, on the aggressive as well. It's an unfortunate situation. I don't think Soucy meant any ill will there or anything malicious. And at the same time, though, it was a nice hit by Soucy. And for them to go the other way and score was, pretty nice. And it's a nice pass by Panarin to Lafreniere, and you get Trocheck kind of going up the middle, causing chaos. And that's the good thing about the line is you've had, specifically Trocheck and Lafreniere going to the net. Makes Panarin's life a lot easier. And Lafreniere scores again. So Lafreniere now 3 goals in his last 4 games. He's picking up the pace for sure. So the Rangers take a 3-1 lead. But the Lightning cut the score to 1 again. And this time it's Zemgus Girgensson scoring his 3rd goal of the season from Gordon Bjorkstrand at 13:59. And this is a play where the Rangers weren't able to clear the puck. Borgen had an opportunity to do so. Lafreniere doesn't win a board battle. Then it's just kind of chaos. And on a rebound, Girgensson scores past Shesterkin. So give a little bit of blame there to players that I think were actually some of the most praiseworthy, right? This is the Soucy-Borgen pair and the Trocheck line. I think 5 of maybe the best skaters collectively in this game, but kind of fucked up there a little bit, and it makes it 3-2. But then one of those guys and one of the culprits of that goal, basically, 2 minutes and 21 seconds later scores. It's Will Borgen at 16:20, giving the Rangers a 4-2 lead. Borgen's first goal of the season. And give a lot of credit to Adam Fox for initially starting the play. And the Rangers while the defense really was not great, they really were at a position. It was not a coaching staff's dream, but they really did do a good job as far as, making intercepting passes and just, attacking maybe being too aggressive, but it worked. And so even though Fox doesn't get a point on this, he was kind of off the ice for a while at this point. He kind of got it going where Rangers then get it into the Lightning zone. And a really nice play by Borgen to be able to keep the puck in at the blue line. Does a poke check. I think it was Bjorkstrand that might have lost it. And then corrals the puck. And look, it goes off the defenseman and in, but it was a nice goal by Borgen, who has, had a nice season for the Rangers, signs that extension last year after getting traded from Seattle. You're not going to see him on the score sheet much, but look, he's really done a very nice job in that second pair, better than I think any Ranger fan could have hoped for when they got him. So 4-2 Rangers there, but another Yanni Gourde penalty with Adam Fox on the receiving end. Gourde slashes Fox at 16:45. And at this point, the Rangers, just went up 4-2, really have a chance to kind of put their foot on the gas and really not end the game, but put it in somewhat of cruise control. Granted, it's early, but it goes the other way. It's a shorthanded goal for Jake Gensel, who not only is a great player, but he's a total Ranger killer, always has been since he came up with Pittsburgh. 7th goal of the season from Moser. And it makes it 4-3. So 7 goals in the first period. First time that we've seen that in the NHL since the 2020, late in the 2023 season. So doesn't happen too often, like in the first period for it to happen. So, sometimes you see it in the third, especially with that goals in the mix, but in the first, it's rare. But we see it here. And not a very good pass by Zibanejad, but not a good play by Fox. Fox needs to find a way to corral it. He doesn't. And Fox doesn't have the speed to catch Gensel. And the Gensel goal was similar to, I think it was Jonathan Drouin in the Islander game where, Igor, has been beat 5-hole on some of these breakaway type situations. Gensel's able to open him up and go backhand. And, it's a skilled goal, obviously, but one at that point where I'm just looking, it wasn't a bad goal given up by Igor, but it's one that I'm just looking for him to make the stop. That's his 3rd goal allowed. He hasn't been unbelievable lately. He's been a little bit better depending on kind of where you want to, look at it. But overall, I think that his game has, slipped up a bit from where it had been earlier in the season. But obviously, like I said before, Igor was fantastic the final 2 periods. Either way, not even short in the goal. Give Meek a little bit of blame. Give Fox a little bit of blame. And it's 4-3, and that's the score going in the second period. And then, unfortunately, Tampa really was by far the better team in the second period, which I thought maybe the Rangers would kind of settle things down. I mean, they settled things down, I guess, in the sense of lacking offensive chances, but they gave up a lot. And at 6:20, Igor actually trips Braden Point for a 2-minute penalty on a play where he just puts the stick out. Point had a little bit of a break. I think Schneider was the defenseman that was trying to catch him. And for Braden Schneider, I want to see a little bit more from him. Like I said, he hasn't been bad, but he just hasn't been good enough. And it's unequivocal as far as Will Borgen. Will Borgen has played much better hockey than Schneider. And that's maybe more praise to Borgen than a slight to Schneider, but it's the truth. And you would have felt that maybe at this point that maybe that wouldn't have been the case. That's where it is. But the Rangers do kill up that penalty in large part thanks to Igor, making the saves on that one. Tampa Bay, while they don't rank well this year, of course, has dangerous pieces in Kucherov, Point, Gensel. They're not fully loaded, but, they are definitely still dangerous, but they don't score there. And eventually, the Rangers are able, after, like I said, a real struggle of a second, they're able to get a really big goal. And it's Trocheck scoring his 1st goal of the season from Panarin and Gavrikov. So that's the 3rd assist of the night for Panarin. And you know what? Actually, I want to bring up, although it happens later, I guess. So never mind. But it's another sort of odd man rush opportunity, which is really big. The counterattack for the Trocheck line is a big part of their game. And look, there's risk that comes with that. There's goals against that come with that. But if they can be any semblance of what they were 2 seasons ago, we're in for a treat, and it makes this team just so much better. But Rangers catch a break. Vasilevsky just kind of trips and falls. Trocheck waits him out a little bit, but around the same time Trocheck shoots, Vasilevsky just falls. And it's kind of just an innocent wrist shot by Trocheck that goes in. and gives the Rangers a 5-3 lead. And then Vasilevsky would not return for the third, not because of anything injury related, but I guess Cooper felt like his night was over. And Johansson, the backup for the Lightning, would come in, and the Rangers would take a 6-3 lead on another Vincent Trocheck goal. Second of the game, assisted by Panarin and Panarin, who picks up his fourth assist on the night. And this was one where Panarin does a really nice job of getting it into the zone against a lot of Lightning defenders, drops it off for a streaking Panarin, and then a little bit of a drop pass to the middle of the ice to Trocheck, who scores. So good job by Panarin, getting in on the offensive there, and Trocheck, just again, being a real big storyline here the last two games, and really coming back and getting the job done for this team. So it's 6-3 Rangers. Then things get a little bit physical. Scott Savarin mixing things up, where there's a save by Igor, and Savarin kind of takes a couple of whacks at Shesterkin, and Gavrikov comes in there, ends up getting a double minor, technically a cross check and a roughing minor on Gavrikov. That's one of those situations where you don't mind it. They're up by 3. You want to protect your goalie. Gavrikov and Shesterkin are friendly, just as it is. But good for Gavrikov, right? A new Ranger, but an important one, and probably one of the veterans. It's a Ranger team that it's a mix of veterans and young players, and Gavrikov's been in the league for a while, and it's good to see that out of him. He was really ticked off, and he took it out on Savarin there, and it ended up in a Lightning power play, but they don't score on it. And then after that, it ended. The Lightning took a 2-minute on the ice penalty. Rangers don't score on that one either. And then at 14:22, Adam Fox hooks Jake Gensel. And so that led to a 6-on-4 where the Lightning had a lot of chances. And then even after it ended, 6-on-5, they thought the puck was the Rangers' zone for like 3 minutes, a long, long time. But then after it somehow was over, and Shesterkin made a lot of good saves in that process, it was Will Cuylle who ends up getting the empty net goal, his 6th goal of the season, 2nd goal of the night, assisted by Adam Fox. And the Rangers take a 7-3 lead. They win by that score, so a football score. Rangers beat the Lightning 7-3. Lightning outshot the Rangers 36-21, but you'll take it all the same. And, it's good to see the offense getting going now, and hopefully that continues. So next Ranger games, it's a weekend back-to-back, Saturday night, Sunday night, at Columbus and home against Detroit. Now, obviously, in the case of Detroit, Rangers have just faced them recently, so we'll see what comes of that. That game was in Detroit. And, of course, it'll be one game of Shesterkin, one game of Quick. And you can make the case. I try to make the predictions if I can, and sometimes it's more obvious than others. This one isn't so clear, but my gut and hunch is that it'll be Quick at Columbus and Shesterkin home against the Red Wings. Now, the rebuttal to that is that Quick played very well just against Detroit, like less than a week ago. So that could be factored in definitely. Just seems like in these situations, everything being equal, and maybe it's coincidence, but probably not, that if it's a road and home situation, that Quick seems to get the road start and Shesterkin gets the one at home. So that's going to be my guess. I'm envisioning Quick in Columbus and then Shesterkin against Detroit. But if it were the other way around, I wouldn't be completely stunned. So, the only thing to look at lineup-wise is with Gabe Perreault, but I would think that they'll, have him start with Zibanejad and Miller, but we'll find out. So Rangers with a couple of days off, 9-7-2 now, in a very bunched up Eastern Conference from top to bottom. So you got to just stack as many wins as you can. And, again, the road success has really been a very, very pleasant surprise. 8-1-1 is no small thing. And, they'll hope to continue that road success at Columbus Saturday night. But for now, the Rangers are victorious. They go to Tampa Bay and they beat the Lightning by a score of 7-3.